improve. I mean, we're still all right. It's just a little bit over 7. And obviously we just priced somebody out at like 6% with doing a little bit of a buy down. So I mean, with a good credit score, good money down, I mean, we can still get like 5.99 if that's going to be something that is going to, help sway borrowers, et cetera. It wound up being, I mean, it was about $135 a month in savings with doing that buy down versus about $60 a month in using that cash just to pay down the balance of the mortgage. So there's definitely a lot more leverage with buying down the interest rate versus doing a price cut or just putting more money down. It's better leverage with buying down the interest rate. So anyway, happy to look at those scenarios with everyone. And I think overall there's some pretty good news out there, and we'll see kind of what the markets do with that good data after we kind of get out of the holiday next week.
Cool.
Awesome.
Guys.
Thanks,
Good.
Brian. And you always know where to find Brian to ask any questions. But yeah, we're keeping a close eye on the economy and everything political. Also, full updated and made new July calendars. So the July calendars are out. So grab one when you walk by the center area. Just a nice visual of what's ahead. Okay. And then before we get to Tim Stuart, who is going to talk to us today about auctions and different options for our clients who are selling, Kelly's going to give us a little update. He saw last week a sneak peek of the new listing agreement.
I mean, I saw like this much of part of it, so I didn't really see it. No,
Is this part of what you're going to say?
No.
You're going to say, oh,
sort of, maybe.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
A little bit. Yes.
I won't steal your,
Yes.
your big
Can I just go?
punchline. Go. Start with the punchline. There was no buyer's commission.
Yeah. No. Okay, so I went to an RMLS like rules meeting on Friday. Was really well attended by a lot of PBs, and it's some things that we thought were going to happen the way we were going to happen. I don't know. I've got some surprises that at least they were surprises to me. We're going to go through those, and then I want to go over that seller contributions addendum because we're going to start requiring it from this moment moving forward with every contract you write. So I want to go through a couple scenarios on that so you understand it. All right. So quick little update here.
And we're requiring it because we want you to get paid, not because we're being strict.
Okay. Yeah, right. Okay. What's happening at the RMLS? So early July, so any moment now, the new listing agreement should be rolled out. I haven't seen it. I do know it's not going to have a BAC section on it. Okay. And then there's going to be, let's go back. Okay. And then coming soon, there will be a seller offer of compensation addendum. On August 1st, RMLS will begin zeroing out the BAC to the list server feeds. On the 17th at 12 a.m. will be the date that the BAC is completely removed and no offer of compensation will be allowed. Next slide, please. So
Wait, sorry, can you go back for a second?
I'm going to hit on those.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. So the new listing agreement. So a new listing agreement will address the changes resulting from the NAR lawsuit and the House Bill 4058, which goes into effect at the end of the year. And the BAC offering will be removed. I am expecting some additional changes too. They just are literally still working on this. They're going to be working on it to like the last minute. Yes.
Going to be in OREF and the market forms and
This is an RMLS document. So the RMLS listing agreement you guys use on that's a RMLS published form, has nothing to do with OREF or Oregon Realtors. So it's a completely set. There's some crossover from the attorneys that work on them, but because they kind of cross-pollinate, but it's a unique form. It's not linked to OREF. Yeah. And then the addendum, the addendum will be published shortly too, and it's going to address your sellers that have listed prior to August 17th on the old listing agreement, and it'll address a change to there being no BAC offering. So there'll be an addendum you guys are going to all have to execute on any listing you have that offered a BAC. Any questions on that? I don't know what the addendum is going to look like, but I'm sure it'll accomplish what we're looking for. Okay. The RMLS will begin zeroing out the BAC fields to their listserv feed. So this isn't going to be on the actual RMLS website. This will be on the data on the websites they provide data for. Okay, so then they provide data to like, I don't know, it's almost 4,000 websites they said. They update these websites like constantly. So when there's changes made in the MLS, they're not like, I'm sure it's on a time schedule if it's like every 15 minutes or whatever, but they're constantly updating these feeds. And there's a lot of data that goes in and out of those feeds, okay? And so they have to do it incrementally, otherwise they're gonna break the real estate websites. So they have to roll them out incrementally. So there'll be a moment where you'll go to Zillow and it'll show the BAC as 2.7%, and then you'll go to another website and it will show it as 0. And it's unfortunate. It will be accurate in the RMLS. It's probably where it most matters. I questioned them on this and they're just like, sorry, this is the only way we can do it. You guys have any questions about that? Does it make sense?
How long will that take?
I think they're shooting for August 13th to complete it.
Starting August, it'll take 13 days.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot, right?
Yeah.
So they're just doing it in little batches, okay? So any questions about that? Kind of sucks, but those websites, I mean, sure, like they said, we asked about it and they said, we're not worried about Zillow. We're not worried about Redfin. We're not worried about your big company's websites. We're worried about the one that was created by somebody's kid who just got out of college, who since has moved on to become a landscaper. And like, those are the scenarios I'm more concerned about, those being accurate. Next one. Okay. So the BAC will be removed at 12 a.m. on August 17th. It won't be present in the RMLS. The historic data won't be present for you to view in the MLS, but the RMLS is going to keep it on their backside, on their back end. So they'll have access to it. I don't know why. Because honestly, I feel like the moment the switch goes off, that information becomes irrelevant anyways, probably. Or at least a month later, who knows what all the changes, that information will be that important to us. And then the settlement requires RMLS to verify the existence of buyer representation agreements. Why they decided the MLSs were going to be the ones to police that, I have no idea. So you're going to look for some different changes in their in the systems, the way they, like a line is probably going to have a box that you have to check that says you have a buyer representation agreement with this buyer before you show it. If you set up like a search, like a reverse a buyer search or something like that in the MLS, there'll probably be a box that checks that you have to check that says you have a representation agreement with that buyer. So look for little tweaks like that. Okay. And if you check that box, you don't have one, what are you doing? Fraud. It's fraud. Okay.
Mhm. And I heard that like they're having RMLS regulated because they can, through SentryLock, they have access to see who's opening lock boxes.
Yeah.
And so,
RMLS is not thrilled about it. They don't want to be doing it at all. They don't want to police any of us. Like,
mhm.
so. Okay, so there will be no offer of compensation allowed. This is a change. This was a little surprising to me. So we've all been talking about it. Like they've been saying, website, like companies been coming out, large companies been coming out and saying, you can still offer closing costs to the buyer in your listing, and that will wink, wink, nudge, nudge, be the BAC. And RMLS is saying that's not going to fly. They said if they see any repetitive use of that, they're going to pull the listing. Because they are terrified of the DOJ. Terrified.
Can you define repetitive use, meaning multiple times on the listing?
I would say if your seller is going to offer closing costs to a client because they're not able to sell their house and they want to do this, good. But if you're using it as part of your marketing plan, they're going to catch it and they're going to pull your listings. And if the DOJ comes looking, they're going to say you like are not participating with the settlement that you agreed to, and you'll find yourself in trouble.
So you said this is only on RMLS, like we could still send out an email or hand out flyers.
You can advertise a buyer compensation, agent compensation on any non-RMLS supplied marketing. So if it's your personal website and you have the list feed, no, right? If you're advertising, if you're advertising your listings on your website and that information is coming from the RMLS, then you may not advertise a BAC on there. If it's on your real estate sign, 100%. If it's in a flyer, 100%. If it's on a unique website that does not pull information from the MLS, 100%. Okay.
So if you're using your KW website with the IDX.
You may not.
that pulls, okay.
You may not.
Seller goes into their Zillow profile and adds that on. So you and I talked about it, they can't add it.
No. Absolutely not. 100%. Cannot. Okay.
About the your flyer, you send out a flyer with the service.
Yeah, that's fine. Well, then if it's pulling the information, if it's
It can pull pictures if you authorize it.
I think
That's
that's
not like
different.
syndication.
Yeah, I think that's different. I don't think that's like I don't think that's it, like, it's not really a feed, right? Where either peep buyers are going and they're looking at multiple properties, right? That's just one piece of advertising. So I think that's fine.
But you can't even say that it's gonna offer seller compensation or contributions at all.
Period.
Unless it's been on the market for 2 months and.
Unless it's a unique situation and it's not part of your everyday market plan.
So not on attached documents, it's the thing that says.
Absolutely not. Absolutely.
Nowhere in the MLS.
You can't even say call seller's broker.
No, you cannot,
Wow.
you cannot use the word compensation in any way. Okay,
So, wait a minute, so on a flyer, you can, but you can't.
on a flyer you can, right? But on the RMLS, you may not in any of their feeds.
And don't use compensation, call it sweetener.
Well, so this meeting was ridiculous in the way they were dancing around using like any numbers or commission because everybody's afraid of price fixing. And so it would just got really crazy. They started to use the word bananas instead of, you can't use a code. Like you can't put like the price of that house is
Banana.
$800,027. You can't do that, right? If you're trying to sneak a code to offer compensation, if you get caught, it's going to get tossed out because they're terrified of the DOJ. And that they should be probably. Because DOJ is not done yet, guys. They're still out. Like they just met with NAR last week and the NAR said, hey, it was a great meeting. I hope it leads to other meetings. But it wasn't like, hey, we got this under control, guys. This is like, hey, hold your breath because we're still in trouble. My mom's still mad. So don't piss her off.
But do you want to elaborate on that? Because, right, like the DOJ wants it not just so we're not advertising it. They want to get rid of the practice of.
They do not want sellers offering to pay buyers agents for anything.
So they're trying to take it a step further.
I mean, that's where we are.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where we are.
So-
We're already there.
Yeah.
They just want to make sure it's not happening.
It's pretty much then gonna completely go away. Like, there's not, we talked about previously, there's gonna be this 18 to 2-year, 18-month transitionary period, who knows how long, right?
Yeah.
With the sellers offering closing costs.
Right.
Now, that's shut off. and
That's-
it's just gonna happen. like that.
Right. I thought that was I honestly thought that we were just going to replace the BAC offering with that. I just, in my mind, everybody's just going to pivot to that. And it was going to be like some sort of sneaker. No.
Could you have like, hey, link to my website at chrismers.com, here's more info on the property, and then we list it out, hey, it's my own personal site, it's not necessarily.
You
linked
cannot,
To the RMLS, but
you might be able to put a link in the private remarks, but you cannot put a link to another website in your public remarks that has any branding on it. That's a violation of RMLS rules.
oh,
But yeah, Chris, to kind of talk to what you're saying, yeah, like the spirit, I think is changing. We thought that there was going to be a lot more conversation.
And I think it was,
Do you still want to offer? We don't
Yeah.
really know. we
in
don't really know.
hindsight, I think that was like naive of me to think that we could get away with that,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And the DOJ is making it very clear that this is not going to happen.
So
Alright.
if you have listings, you just no longer, I mean, as a brokerage, are we going to, can we offer a BAC? I mean, if I have a listing.
Somebody was talking about, and this was not vetted, but somebody said, well, at my company, we are going to offer this amount. Our company's offering this amount. To me, that feels a little bit like price fixing
Yeah,
because you guys are all independent contractors. So you guys all get to do what you want. There are listings technically, so there's a little bit of wiggle room gray area there, but I just don't, again, I don't think that's good for your clients. I don't think that's good for the industry. I think that I think that probably opens us up to scrutiny that we don't want, that you certainly do not want.
But you could have it in a flyer
Yeah.
in your listing.
100%.
So if they show it and they pick it up and read it, it would say what it is. So
And
that might save you a few
is-
phone calls.
Is the addendum for the seller's commission to offer commission, is it an addendum to the listing agreement or an addendum to the sale agreement?
So there's an addendum coming out that eliminates the BAC from RMLS. There's already an addendum that addresses seller compensation. We're going to go over that here in a little bit.
But that's part of the sales agreement.
Part of the
So
sales
there's,
agreement.
it will not be, there's nowhere it will be.
Yeah, RMLS is
part of
out of the
this
compensation business.
Listing.
Out of this buyer, yeah, yep. Okay, so let's just go through, there's a lot of talk in the industry about this. I've fielded a lot of questions about this. We rolled this addendum out but I want to get into a little bit more detail about it because I've seen some scenarios and I figured out how we are going to use it as a company. Okay, so let's go here. So I'm going to require it almost every single transaction you do. So if there's a buy side in the RMLS seller paid compensation to buyer's agent, if it's a non-RMLS seller paid compensation to buyer's agent, if we represent the seller, this RMLS paid compensation to buyer's agent, so on the buy side, sell side, sorry, I didn't edit the bottom one. If there's compensation paid to the buyer's agent by the seller, either through the RMLS or through a term in the sale agreement, we are going to require the use of this addendum, period, okay? If there's no compensation paid by the seller at all, then you do not need to use the addendum, which so far we haven't had one of those yet. I don't think. Next slide, please.
So then one more time.
So if the seller is paying the buyer's agent either through an agreement in the RMLS or an agreement through the sale agreement, then we are going to use this addendum. Okay. We do, and I'll go into some details why here as we go, and I'll give you my train of thought. Okay, so why the promise of compensation in the listing agreement to address the BAC? Because in the listing agreement, it says the buyer is represented by the RMLS subscriber. Broker's firm shall offer the brokerage fee compensation to the cooperating firm of the percentage. So as the listing agreement is set up, we pay the buyer's agent out of our commission. Okay? All right, that's how this is
Currently.
set up. All right, the problem with that is, next slide, please. On your closing statement, the money never comes to us. It's paid directly by the seller, right? So as it actually happens, the seller's paying the buyer's agent compensation and never touches our office. Okay?
That's an easier fix.
What's that?
That's an easier fix.
Yeah. Well, we could take the money in and then pay it out, and that would cost all of you guys a lot of money because
We used to
had
do that.
process. We had to process it, and that's a big, and this is a nice workaround that the escrow company's done for us, but it's created a problem where the seller's now paying the buyer's agent commission, and we agreed that we're paying it. So we need to do something in the sale agreement that addresses that, okay? So we're going to the next slide here. So if in the agreement, and this is the earnest money, this is the sale agreement here, section 8 says if buyer is requesting seller's contributions towards buyer's expenses in this transaction, yes or no? Well, if they're not asking for it in the sale agreement, but they're relying on the RMLS, they technically aren't asking for it, but at the end of the day, it's going to be paid by the seller. So we're going to use this addendum here, and it says total buyer's agent compensation to buyer's agent firm in the amount of blank here. Is everybody tracking me so far? Do you guys see the conflict? Okay, next slide. So in order to resolve the conflict, because what we don't want is some buyer's agent out there, and I can think of a couple, that if you add this onto a sale agreement, they're going to say, oh, well, I'm getting 2.5 plus 2.5, so you owe me 5 at closing, right? Because you have a listing agreement that says you're going to pay me, the brokerage is going to pay me, and then we have an addendum to the sale agreement that says you're going to pay me, and I want 5 because that's what you promised me. So in order to do that, we're going to be clear, and we're going to use this language at the bottom of on the form, and I'll put this in the Facebook group. Compensation of buyer's agent firm is in unison with the buyer's agent commission as represented in the RMLS listing. So there's no doubt that we're paying one commission and the amount is stipulated right here. Okay?
But that's just until August.
That's till August 17th, and then you're going to be using this anyways, right? So we're doing 2 things here. One, we're going to be very clear about our paperwork in the sale agreement. 2, we're going to get used to using it because we're going to have to use it anyways.
Mhm.
Okay?
And the chances of doing transactions that might bleed past August 17th.
Transactions that begin before the 17th, the industry said we're playing by the old rules.
Okay.
So the commission that's offered pre 12 a.m. on August 17th, every deal that goes into contract at 11:59 p.m. on August 16th and before, the RMLS contracted advertised buyer's agent commission rate stands, and they'll be held responsible for paying that. I would say you may want to start printing out your RMLS sheets when you write the offer. RMLS has the data, they can find it, but you're going to want to maybe have a record of what the BAC was, because somebody can start changing these things the closer we get to the date. Okay. All right. So I thought of a couple scenarios here really quick we could run through really fast that might address changes. So what if the buyer's agent compensation is 2%, which is lower than the RMLS offered amount. So how do we address that? So we put 2% in here, which is a part of the engineer buyer representation agreement, says you get 2%. And then we're gonna check other down here, just to be clear, compensation to buyer's agent's firm is based upon the RMLS offered amount of 1%, plus an additional 1% to be paid to the buyer's agent firm for a total of 2%. Okay? You follow me? Okay,
Where would that happen?
so if you have, there are 1%, there are BACs out there for 1% or lower right now.
Okay.
And you have a buyer representation agreement saying you're gonna get 2%. So somebody's got to pay the extra percent. This is the tool you use to get that percentage paid by the seller.
Okay.
Okay,
This is on the addendum, not the sale contract?
this is the addendum to the sale agreement. Sorry, it looks similar. I know it looks all, their style guides make everything look the same. This is the buyer compensation addendum. And I could show the big thing, but then you guys will be able to see what I wrote.
Has
Okay,
Lennar ever accepted that? Because Lennar only pays 1%.
good luck on that. They may. Okay, so what if those terms are agreeable to the seller though? What if the seller doesn't want to pay that amount? Right? So you make the seller's counter offer, you reference the seller contribution addendum. And let's say the seller decides they want to pay a total of 1.5%. So you put buyer's agent compensation to be 1.5%. And the compensation of buyer's agent firm is based upon the RMLS offers about a 1% plus an additional 0.5% paid to buyer's agent. So it's a negotiable item, right? So in that contribution addendum is numbered. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The biggest number is the one that's in. The biggest number that's signed is the one that's active. This is the one that is most relevant.
To accept that counter in that specific circumstance, is it just buyers and sellers signing, or the agents also have to sign in order?
No, because this is buyers and sellers, right? You have a representation agreement saying the buyer's gonna pay you 2%.
Yeah.
So the seller's gonna pay 1.5% of that, 1.5% of that, and the buyer is supposed to pay you the other half.
Okay.
Okay, so when you're having a conversation with your clients about this, you're like, hey, yes, you're going to accept this term. If you're gonna accept this offer, they're gonna pay 1.5% of the commission. You still owe me another half. You're gonna be in a decision where you're deciding if you're gonna make them pay that or if you're gonna write it off.
This is the seller countering back.
Yes.
Buyer.
100%.
They're probably not gonna put what's on line 21, which is very helpful that you've included, but they're not gonna put that.
They may not, but what if you're representing the seller though? I think I was kind of looking at this more from our perspective. I would want you to put this on there. I think for clarity's sake, that should be used. I mean, there's been a lot of chatter about this. I think that, I don't know how many companies are gonna do this, but a lot of brokers been talking about putting additional language in there to be clear about what's going on.
This is
Right.
not the only time we'll talk about it, in case you're still a little confused.
Yeah, yes,
But that is only until August 17th. 'Cause
right.
we're
With
not-
the August 17th, you probably won't be using this,
Right.
this word. Yeah.
So,
You're still gonna be using this document.
yes.
Yeah. And let's go through one more really quick here and then we'll get to it. All right, so what if they're offering more than what your buyer's representation agreement says? Okay, because down here in the buyer's representation agreement, it says right here, and this is in concert with what the settlement says. Compensation is not allowed to be greater than the fee, okay? So that means whatever you've agreed to in your buyer representation agreement, be it 2%, 1%, 2.25%, I don't know, whatever the number is that you've agreed to, you may not accept more than that, regardless of the offering. Okay? So what do you do with the extra money? You just let the seller keep it? Next slide, please. So,
Back one.
go back. So what I would do is put the amount that I have my representation agreement here. And then I would take the additional amount and put it here and make sure my client got that money or take it off the price or something, right? But that money should go back to your client. If they're offering more, as a good buyer's agent, you want to make sure your client gets that money. Can you renegotiate your buyer representation agreement?
Yes.
No. You may not renegotiate your buyer representation agreement for a couple reasons. One, you're a fiduciary. You agreed to do this at this amount. And all of a sudden, because somebody's offering more, you somehow you're worth more because somebody's offering more. I don't think it works, right?
Well, at that point, can you renegotiate the buyer representation agreement? at any
Yeah, let's say you sign up with an agreement and it's turning out to be way more work than you expected. You say, hey, guys, look. We started off in this was our target, this was our objective. It's since changed. And this is taking more, whatever, I don't know how you sell it to them. Now in order for us to keep going, we need to increase the amount. That would be one way to do it.
Before you have something under contract.
Before you write a
Before you
contract,
Right,
negotiate.
a contract.
before you show the property. With a higher one, right?
Independent of a property.
If you knew they were offering more, yeah, independent of the property. It's more has to do with the situation, okay? And one of the main reasons why, this next slide here. In your buyer representation agreement, it says right here, and I implore you all to read these because you're gonna have to be held, you could be held accountable to these. If someone decided not to pay you. And F here is be loyal to the buyer, but not taking action that is adverse or detrimental to the buyer's interest in a transaction. And I'm telling you, raising the amount you're getting paid because they're offering more is detrimental to the buyer.
But lowering isn't?
Lowering is, no, it's buyer benefit.
It's detrimental to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, that's all I have to say. Any questions about this?
Title companies are gonna get the sale contract, the compensation addendum, and if you're represented buyer and the buyer representation agreement?
So that's a good question. So we heard the other day that a bank wanted a copy of the buyer representation agreement. Not sure why. You would think a broker demand would cover it. But we'll see. We don't know exactly the answer to that yet.
And we'll keep talking about this. We will have those conversation like practices around these following the meetings in July. But yeah, it's gonna be a wild couple of months for our industry. So thanks, Kelly.
This, I'll put a copy of this presentation on our Facebook page.
What's Facebook?
Mhm. Thank you, Kelly.
We do the buyers, so if we want to do the highest, so 2.5, say 2.5, and they're only offering 2. How do we take care of the 0.5? I mean, if they're.
So the buyer could pay for it, or you could not take it, or you can get the seller to pay for it.
You have some paperwork for that, for if you're just not taking.
You should probably do an addendum
An addendum.
to protect, I mean, if I was a buyer, I'd want an addendum. Because I'm entering into an agreement that essentially says they're owing you more than what's being offered, and they would probably want that addressed at that point. Maybe they're gonna pay it though, like, I mean, I think as people get more used to this, they're,
The conversation.
the upper price ranges are probably going to be more likely to pay you what you're worth as it bleeds out and if people get better at presenting and get better at doing real estate. Because I think that's what's ultimately gonna happen here.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Kelly. All right, now let's switch gears and Tim Stuart is gonna do a presentation. He is one of our agents, but also an auction specialist. So Tim, thanks for giving a presentation.
Awesome, thank you. And welcome everybody online or Zoom. My name is Tim Stuart. I've been running my own brokerage for the last some years. We do specialize in real estate at auction. I'm happy to be here at Keller Williams, Portland Premier. I'm going to give you 2 promises for today. We've got about 18 minutes, is that correct? Okay. I'm gonna have to talk fast, but I'm gonna give you 2 promises. One is that I'm never gonna leave you where your client knows more about the auction method than you do. You do not want to be in that situation. We've had multiple times where we've had ballroom auctions, we've had multiple property auctions, and we always ask, are you being represented by a broker? And it's amazing how many times that you hear, well, my broker really doesn't, yeah, I've got a broker, but they really don't know about the auction method. So we're just here today. And they come up with a check, they're ready to buy, they've done all the paperwork, they've done all their due diligence. And they're not being represented. That's one promise. The second promise is that when you leave, you will know the basics about the auction method, 17 minutes, okay? But I'm always available to talk, we'll chat. We've got a great coffee area over here. I'll buy you a cup of coffee. And one thing that everybody asks is, what's that? Hay batter swing auction chant. What is that? Everybody's interested in the auction chant. And so a typical real estate auction takes between 8 and 10 minutes to sell. Once you start the auction and the hammer goes down, or you're selling it subject to the selling confirmation, takes 8 to 10 minutes. I'm going to show you real quick in a condensed version how that would go. An opening bid of 400,000, 400,000 bid enough 400,000. Thank you, 400,000. Now 500. 500,000 bid enough 500. I've got 400,000 over here. Need to be 500. 500,000 bid enough 500,000. Now 600,000. 600,000 bid enough 600,000. 600,000. 600,000. Now 700,000 bid enough
7. Sorry, I got into it.
800,000 now 9. 9, your turn, sir. 900,000. 900,000 bid enough 900,000. 900,000, thank you, 900,000, now a million, a million, a million one, a million one, a million one, now a million two, now a million three, a million three, a million three. Sold it out, 1,200,000, buyer number 859. That's the, and usually
That's impressive.
I get, I'll say, give them a round of applause. I'm not asking for the applause. The buyers are excited because they're in a room. Typically, it's between, our last one, we had 33 people online and 33 people in the house. So, we had 67 people that didn't get it, and we had one buyers that did. So, it's a great way to gather the, gets a little bit of excitement around a listing that maybe has been stale. Great auction properties are ones that are hard to price, hard to value. If you have a real estate auction, bring everybody together, make them compete to be the high bidder. I'm going to go through here real quick, a little bit about I am a real estate auction specialist, so I'm the one to come to. I'm the only one in Keller Williams, as far as I know. So I'd love to help you out with just about anything. I'll go through at the end of the packet, right? The package you have with you, there's kind of the general documents you would get. There's terms and conditions, and that's just a one-page document that explains all the process. It's a little bit too much to get into right now. And then my contact information and what type of property you sell. So here's a little bit about So I'm not, or you are.
I accidentally did that.
So the earliest use of the auction method, you probably saw it. It was in Rome, 500 BC.
Oh, wow.
That's pretty amazing.
Peter, how was that?
Very interesting, but I think seller got screwed.
I would explain to you what that was, but that joke would have gotten even worse. The London Evening Post, there's advertisement back in 1739. There's records of that. The Farmers Home Administration had 26 properties to sell. They had sold it in 2 hours. In 83, to bring it up a little bit recent history, in 83, the VA had 200 properties to sell, and they sold those in out of Detroit. Of course, everybody thought they wouldn't be able to do it, and I think they sold it in 2 days. Negative perception of the auction, once considered a last resort, it's no longer a last resort because of the collector cars sell, equine or horses sell great. So it's not so much pennies on the dollar. With a professionally marketed auction, is a great way to find the true value in the market value. I've got a bunch of advertisements, a bunch of promotional stuff back there of different auctions that we've done. Hopefully I'll be able to get through a few more of them. Advantages to the seller determines the selling date, as well as the terms of the, and conditions of the sale. We get together with the seller, line everything out. On this date, you're gonna have an auction offer, and on this date, you're gonna close. You sign today, 75 days from today, you'll have a check in your hand and escrow. Targeted marketing designed specifically for your property. Like I said, there's brochures back there on each particular property. It doesn't just go into the MLS. It can go into the MLS in both, I'm licensed in Oregon, Washington, and Idaho. Principal broker or managing broker in all three. Required pre-qualified buyers, usually they have to show proof of funds for the deposit at least, not necessarily all the funds. About 40% of our auctions do get some type of financing. So it's not an all cash deal all the time. Creates a true as is sale. I know that any real estate deal is an as is deal, but the buyers don't think that. The buyers don't think that. Creates fair market value through the competitive bidding process. And the buyers pay the sales commission. So with the use of a buyer's premium. So with the property that I just sold for 1.3, was it 1.3 or 1.2? There will be a 10% buyer's premium on top of that gets added to the high bid to create the purchase price. And then the purchase price is goes to escrow. All the funds are reduced out of it. But typically, depending on the value of the property, our general buyer's premium is 10%. It's easy to figure. The advantages of the seller determines the selling date. Did we have the double slide? Sorry about that. Probably didn't update it. The advantages to the buyer, it's open bidding process. They see all the offers. You know, there's
One change in the slide was the second one had that the seller can opt out, but doesn't accept or reject. Go back one slide.
Yeah, it is. In the subject to sale, the seller can, just like a traditional transaction, they can accept it, they can reject it, or they can reject it with a counter. Now I'll get into the different types of auctions as we go through. The advantage to the buyers, it's open process. They can see the bidder across the room. They bid the last bid. So you're usually down to $1,000 increments, and it's a pretty easy process to figure. Most of the discovery work is done before the auction date. We typically do a home inspection, a preliminary title report. If you ever have any problems getting a prelim, give me a call. We'll make it happen. I've been working with First American Title for 20 some years, and I say I need the prelim title because I've got 20 buyers that want to make sure that they're not making an offer on something that's got a broken leg, right? And then allows for a quicker possession because of all those things are done, all the due diligence done, and provides option to be professionally represented. And like I said, if you need any help, if you have a buyer that says, I want to buy a property at auction, find out, let them know as much as you know, and then give me a call and I'll walk you through it, or we'll work together. I'm very flexible. Types of auctions, absolute auction. That means it sells regardless of price. A lot of times the collector cars are sold absolute, and the racehorses the same way. I've got several examples. The Idaho property, 1,700 acres, we sold at absolute, no reserve, goes to the highest bidder. The second is there's a minimum bid. So minimum bid auction is where you set the price, where it's either a minimum bid of, say, that $1.2 million property. The minimum bid could be $750,000, so $750,000. The seller is obligated to sell at that number if it's a minimum bid auction.
Is
A
that
lot of
based
times
on the
people use
mortgage?
different verbiage.
Is that
What's
based
that?
on the mortgage that's owed, or is that just based on whatever the seller wants to come up with?
It depends on what the seller.
You certainly have to cover the
Yes.
debt.
Yeah. not all the time.
Okay, the bank might
If they
be,
can be short, either from a bank or an estate, and they just need to liquidate the property.
they might be okay with it.
If they can make it up at closing, you know, we don't care, as long as it's made up. And then the third most safe type is subject to the seller's confirmation, where you accept it, reject it, or reject it with a counter. We put a lot of deals together after the fact. Most properties will have some type of a suggested opening bid or a starting bid. You'll see that in some of the brochures. And then I want you to make a mental note on multi-par. Multi-par is a multi-parcel auction. Both the Idaho properties were multi-par. Those are sold. And I don't have a slide to describe this one, but they're sold one at a time, and the price is set. And then we ask for combinations. So if somebody says, I want lots 1 through 4, and I'll pay the last bid price plus one increment, then they can have that. Either they sell it or they can have that in. So it's an awesome thing to see work, but sometimes it's a little tricky to explain. The 6 different styles of auctions, live on site, and I'm gonna go through these one by one as quickly as I can. Live on site public auction, the private, or if it's usually they're public, private could be specialized luxury homes to where they don't want the guy down at 7-Eleven that just wanted it. The ballroom style auction, the multi-sale auction, we've done properties with HUD, with another auction company based out of, I've worked with Hudson Marshall and Williams and Williams. Probably sold 500 properties with those 2 companies. And they usually do a caravan auction or a auction that starts at 8 a.m. at one point, and then you drive to the next property that's available. And in 2010, we were slight. We had 1 month we had 97 properties that we sold. 3 of those were our company, the rest were the other 2. One was a ballroom auction, the other were on-site auctions. The ballroom style and the sealed bid auction, a sealed bid with a live hybrid, email or fax bid, that's shows it's a little dated there, internet or online only. The live on-site auctions, specifically, they are done at the property and they're live. So an auctioneer is verbally calling the bids. And if you come into a state or somebody downsizing or retiring, don't let the stuff get into the way of you getting the listing, because we can handle this stuff. We work with a lot of different auction companies and can liquidate all the stuff to get to the listing. You know, if they've got an extra implement around or a tractor, we can get through those. Ballroom style, I told you a little bit about that, where it's multiple sellers. And the advantage of that is the sellers can save on individual costs. If they've got 10 properties, we can put them all together and do one marketing campaign for all of them. Sealed bid auction, kind of what it sounds like. Call for offers, done a lot with commercial properties. And then sealed bid and live hybrid. So we take the sealed bids, open them up, and the top 25% get a chance to move on. Either they'll do a boardroom auction or some type of a closed bid auction just for those parties. Internet and online only. With the advent of the internet, of course, we're getting, COVID kind of proved its point, where it's like, okay, how are you going to do it now? You can't be live. How are you going to do it now? So we figured we've been offering online with live at the same time as simulcast, and that's been probably for the last 14 years. Additional auction. So this is your opportunities. This is how we've gotten some of our properties, the referrals from realtors. We love to work with realtors, and we can work out just about any type of a fee structure we'll work with you. It's make it a win-win situation. US Bankruptcy Court trustees, we can work with, the trustees. We've got a couple of them that have worked with, referee services. So how many people know an attorney, right? They have land partitions where multiple heirs, you can't split up the property. They'll hire, the attorney will hire a referee, and then we can help with, facilitate that. A request for proposal, Oregon Department of Corrections, we had, sold 300 acres down there. Partnership with referrals from other auction companies and referrals from past clients. I know we're getting down to crunch time here. This is one of the properties we did. I'm gonna go. This is in Newport. This is a referral from you just need $750.
A couple things that I think our students are probably wondering. So if you have a seller that could benefit from auction, you kind of touched on that, they would come to you and you guys would talk about, you know, how you could possibly partner in auction, right?
Yeah.
And then I didn't know this, that if you had buyers, you can buy at auction and then like this now it's all commission, but you could get buyer's commission.
Yes, absolutely. Could you go to the next slide? I can't get it.
Can we? If, what, if let's say I have a client and they need to sell quickly, the house is in disrepair, doesn't really fit a general market, like from the day we call you and say, hey, I think I've got a good property for you, how long? You said 75 days, is that like from start to go?
That's from contract
to close?
to close.
Contract to close.
75 days.
Which is like,
If there's stuff to get out of it,
yeah,
it's gonna take,
might take a little longer.
depends on what it is. If it's good stuff,
Mhm.
we can sell it along with
Yeah.
the real estate.
Right,
Do it the same day or do it in conjunction with.
or if the terms are right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So when we first spoke to Sam, I was thinking, wow, what a great alternative to an iBuyer, right? Because like, you'll get a client every once in a while says, I need to move, like, I need to get out of my house right now. I'm thinking about accepting an offer from Open Door.
Just to get it done.
Just to get it done, just to get moved on from, just because they don't have money to fix it up. Like, I think this is a really great alternative to that. And it probably provides the same level of certainty and probably a better sales price, I'm guessing. Like, I just think, you know, instead of you're one person bidding on the house, you've got a group of investors bidding on a house. And so I think it's a really good alternative. And that's where I see your business. That's why I see
Yeah.
the real value in your business.
This one, with the last property, the 1,700 acres, I've got this one right here. When this hit the mailboxes, this person called, said,
Mhm.
can you sell ours too?
Mhm.
That way.
Mhm.
And it's every auction. It
Creates
has
another
your next
auction,
auction
yeah.
in it.
Yeah,
And I'll do referrals with other brokers. If they bring me in, we'll do a split one way. And if another auction comes from it that I procure, I'll bring you in. And we'll flip it over the other way. So I'll keep you involved. One, to learn, keep learning, and two, it's just the right thing to do. And
Yeah, I
that's
think
how I
that would be a
run
good partner.
my business.
Yeah, and we just thought this was a great, just. Like, we should all know about auctions, right, as options for our sellers, and, you know, I think a lot of us have had buyers sometimes, but. We're like, oh, I'm looking at this auction site and like panic, but now you don't have to be afraid of that.
This was during COVID. This was a June sale, right after COVID
6
started.
feet, I see 6 feet, 6
Yeah.
feet, 6
Oh,
feet.
yeah.
This is me and the other auctioneer. We made them look at the view. That's why we're out in the
That was
field.
smart,
Oh, that is-
yeah, that's smart.
That's the one of that. The pre-auction offers, we're not obligated to auction. If we put a sign and start marketing and the neighbor says, oh, shoot, I don't want to compete against somebody, and it happens about 20% of the time.
Huh.
Then write it, you've been sitting on the fence, write an offer, and we'll put it together. If there hasn't been any momentum or interest in the property, then this was a broker out of Seattle that bought this one.
And would it be safe to say that, the marketing, because you have these videos set up, they're great. The marketing is probably even more important on an auction because you got that one chance to get somebody in, so you need to do a really good job marketing. And that's probably partially why the 10% fee is, because you also have inspections and like you're talking about getting prelims and all this stuff ahead of time. Plus doing a really extensive marketing program is why that 10% is probably what it is. Right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
I'm okay, but I can go through these real quick. They've got the last 4 pages. This is a great auction. The seller came to us and said, I want to try the auction method. It's like, what are you going to try it for? Well, I've got a couple other properties. I said, well, what do you have? And said, well, we've got this duplex over here, and we've got this one that they did a fix and flip, all generic stuff, you know, and then they had a fourplex. Well, we did a caravan auction, and we did this one first, and even the winning bidder said, seller's not gonna take that. I said, we're gonna write it up, go on to the next property. Guess what? Same buyer bought the next property, and it was a little better for the seller. And then the third one, it went nuts, went crazy, because it was an investment property, and it made sense, dollars and cents.
That's actually really smart. You've got three, because the sellers, go look at the whole thing. They can take a loss on property 1, write it off, take a little gain on 2, and the windfall on 3, come out way ahead of the day.
That's exactly what we did.
Yeah.
I told them, I said, here's the deal, we got all 3 properties contracted. Here's what you owe us, spread it out however you want to. And that's what they did. It's like, oh man, we don't want to take the hit on this, so we'll put all our charges on this. And the seller was happy.
It really gets some back advantages in that. Yeah.
What we did down on the coast, this was here right in Hillsborough. Couple different things, that there was 5 different homes that they could see.
Wow.
They had 5 realtors out there that all told them that it wouldn't sell for more than $1 million. Because he was optimistic, he wanted $1 million. And none of the realtors would do a sunrise, sunset photo shoot. I said, we can do that. The funny part is, he paid for it. He was paid for the photo shoot. So I had my guys go out and we did the sunrise and the sunset, and this was what came out of the sunrise, and property sold for $950.
It's pretty close.
So it wasn't $1 million, but
Pretty close.
we passed that.
Does anyone have any questions for Tim?
So you provide the inspection report? Is that kind of what you were talking about?
Typically, yes, we do.
Okay.
That way, all the buyers have the same information. The only thing we're doing on auction day is negotiating the price. Everybody's got all the information, the prelim, the well test if it needs to be tested, home inspections, all of that. And there can be some roughed up products,
Absolutely.
but all the buyers know about it.
Brett?
So it becomes as is, there is no inspection period, no financing.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's sold as is, true as is.
A lot of buyers want certainty, a lot of sellers want certainty. Right? That's what Zillow offers sold, was certainty. It's like, we're gonna close on this date for this amount of money. The day you agree to it, the day it's all gonna happen. You can plan everything ahead of time and move forward. So for some people, they might have a difficult home situation. Something like this would really be.
Like a super urgency for
Somebody or.
And this is subject to selling confirmation again, state of Oregon, Department of Corrections, they had a prison. And this was just last year.
Cool.
Awesome.
Thank you.
So
You got
Tim, we,
And then you have in the packets are that's one that's gonna be in the Street of Dreams. You get the packet of the documents, the typical documents. There's an inspection report, the property information package, bidder and broker registration. And then the terms and conditions, and that's just a sample of the one we did here in Springfield this January. And then, of course, what all sells at auction, we've done multiple properties in each one of these categories. So I appreciate your time and
thank you.
Like the same
Tim. And
information.
if anyone has questions, feel free, you can reach out to Tim and find.
I do have one other thing. If you put your business card in the back there in the jar. Got a free 32 photo shoot. With a 2D floor plan.
Great.
I've got 2 of them to give away, so.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.